Today we're checking out another Blackview mini PC, and we've already looked at a few so far. Some good, some not so good. The MP100 brings with it some RGB bling, a U-series AMD CPU, and some oddities we need to go over. Can it compete with its price point in today's competitive mini PC market? We'll check it out in depth right after this message. Are you looking for a way to safely and quickly transfer files and apps to a new PC? Well, say hello to Ease Us To Do PC Trans, a simple to use app that can help you transfer programs from one PC to another or create a full backup of your computer. Try it for free with a link in the video description. So, the Blackview MP100 is another all-plastic box which only distinguishes itself from the many mini PCs on the market with its RGB lighting, front port selection, and storage options. The plastic is okay quality. While there are no creaks, the top and bottom flex a little when pressed in. Inside this one is AMD's Ryzen 5700U, a popular CPU when released, and still holds up fine for a lot of computing tasks. It's 8 cores, 16 threads with Radeon Vega graphics, and doesn't use much power either. Blackview's MP100 should be available on Amazon.com at some point, but as of this video, it's only available on AliExpress for just over $295 US, which comes with 16 GB of RAM and the 1TB SSD included. There's also a third option which throws in an extra 16 GB of RAM. So I did mention the ports on the front are unique. It's not every day we see a mini with two USB-C and a USB 3 on the front. All are 10 gigabit and both the USB-C support display out. However, neither allowed the mini to be powered on with my USB-C monitor. You can use one of the USB-C along with a DisplayPort and HDMI for a maximum of 3 displays. Blackview claims the DisplayPort can handle 4K 144Hz. Not something I can test, but there may be someone on this planet that needs that high resolution and refresh rate from a low-powered mini PC. So good for you. Otherwise, the other 2 ports handle up to 4K 60. There's one more USB 3 10 gigabit and a USB 2 along with Realtek Gigabit LAN. For wireless networking, Blackview has thrown in a Realtek 8852BE Wi-Fi 6. And let's start by checking its Bluetooth range. We're looking at the longest distance of uninterrupted music playback without artifacts on my Bluetooth speaker. And the MP100 does really well, matching the top minis so far. For Wi-Fi, I tested the mini 12 meters or 39 feet away from the router using the 5G band in Valorant and looked out for any network issue notifications, but the mini passed the test no problem. So we've got very good wireless range on this mini. In the box you'll find a power supply, VESA mount, and HDMI cord. Now let's have a look inside. Hey, look at that! Rubber feet separated from the screws. Amazing. Lift the lid, and this one needs some force on that rubber to pop it. Right, once it is open, there's space for a 2.5-inch SATA drive on this tray. Then another 4 screws to remove it, and we have access to the M.2 slots and DDR4 memory. Oh, one step forward, one step back. Only one 3200 MHz RAM stick for the 16 GB model, which means single channel GPU performance. I thought we were past this, but just like a fart in a spacesuit, it never goes away. This is going to have a big hit on GPU performance. Anyway, one of the M.2 storage drive slots is populated by a Gen 4 drive, which will only run at Gen 3 speeds, as that's all the 5700U supports. And you have another Gen 3 slot for additional storage. You can have up to 3 drives with the 2.5-inch SATA. Nice. The Wi-Fi card is also replaceable. The only downside here is the lack of cooling for the NVMe drives, but we'll see how the OS drive holds up. Windows 11 Pro is included with the MP100, and pre-installed is an RGB app for a few different lighting options. Even my favorite lighting mode, off, is included. While there's only one storage drive, for some reason it's being partitioned into 2 drives with only 200 GB for the Windows partition. There's no point to this at all. Luckily, it's easy to fix. Right-click the Windows Start icon and click Disk Management. D drive is about to disappear, so make sure there's no data on it. right click the D drive partition and choose delete. Then right click C drive and choose extend. Follow the prompts and it's now one complete drive. Oh, and I should mention, I had trouble using my external SSD on all the USB 3 Type A ports. It kept dropping out, which hasn't been a problem with other minis. Other USB devices work fine, so it looks like it has trouble providing enough power for the SSD. The only way I could get it to work was to connect it to one of the USB-C ports. Happy to report there was no problem running Ubuntu off a USB drive. Pretty stock standard hardware on this one. The U-series CPUs are low on power draw and performance. As you can see in the single core test, the 5700U is at the bottom of this list, but matches the other one I've tested. That being said, Intel's latest 150U has really impressive single core performance. By default, the MP100 is set in its 15 watt mode, and with that, it still came back better than the previous 5700U I've benchmarked by a few percent. It also does better when you up the power limit in the BIOS. Geekbench shows the 5700U at the bottom of single core, as expected, and multi-core is no different. The Blackview MP100 does poorly in H.264 encoding, where memory bandwidth plays a role. You can see the other 5700U is far ahead. This is why pre-built minis should always be sold in dual channel memory mode. AV1 encoding is slow, although the 150U struggles with it as well. Moving on to graphics. You can see the single stick of RAM is slicing DX11 performance almost in half. And a similar result in DX12. It's no surprise the MP100 also has the lowest score in the Steel Nomad Lite graphics test. The 32GB memory model will fix these issues, or you can add another matching 16GB stick to this one so the integrated graphics isn't gimped. The included Gen 4 NVMe drive has great sequential read and write speeds in Gen 3 mode, pretty much maxing out the available bandwidth. I've tested the 5700U for 4K video editing before, and it can't handle my project well with CPU spikes that cause stutters during playback when moving across the timeline. Video editing at lower resolutions or going with an Intel U-series CPU is a better option. The Ryzen 5700U can game decently with esports titles when in dual channel mode, as you can see compared with the Powerbox Mini.
Fight or flesh was out. Mine by right as well.
Reload. Satisfying. One enemy remaining. Last enemy.
Exploit every weakness.
You can also play some less demanding single-player games,
Dumb fucking cops! Who snitched?
and it makes a decent emulation box when it's not hampered with one stick of RAM. But as it is, you're leaving a lot of GPU performance behind.
Missile. Missile.
The BIOS has a wake system from S5 option in the boot tab, and that's the only one I found that's of interest. If you want to increase the power limit of the CPU, you can go to Advanced, AMD CBS, NBIO Common Options, then SMU Common Options, and either change the system configuration to a high one, such as level 4 to 6, or go to Smart Shift Control and put in a higher number to force 28 watt mode at all times. Idle power draw on this mini is nice and low at 7 watts. and the maximum depends on whether you increase the power limit, but tops out at 57 watts. CPU temperature will go up slightly with a high power limit, but still holds up pretty well either way. Fan noise on this Mini is okay. It's quiet doing simple things like browsing the web, but definitely noticeable while gaming or when stressed with multi-CPU workloads. Surprisingly, the NVMe drive held up okay during the thrash test with acceptable thermals even with no cooling. It definitely helps it's only running at Gen 3 speeds. Alright, time to summarize this one. Blackview's MP100 can handle up to 3 storage drives. The Ryzen 5700U CPU performance is good, as is the wireless range. The single channel memory with a 16GB version really hits the integrated graphics performance hard. My external SSD had problems with the USB Type-A ports. Also, what's with the drive partitioning in Windows? At its current pricing, it's pretty close to much more powerful mini PCs, especially if you're in the US, where you have a lot of options available. Overall, Blackview's MP100 isn't bad, but apart from its triple storage, RGB, and good wireless range, it doesn't stand out from the many mini PCs on the market. But one Blackview mini PC I really liked was the budget MP80 featuring Intel's N97, and you can check out the review of that mini PC right here. Cheers!